guys, welcome back to the homestead. So today we're going to be using my recipe or the recipe that I learned a long time ago to make witch hazel at home. I don't even remember where I originally got it from. I'm sure you could probably find other videos out on YouTube around it and stuff that are a couple years old. But I actually like this. And here's the thing, right? If you have a witch hazel bush on your property, or you're thinking about what shrubs and stuff you would like to put on your property, I would recommend maybe ordering some witch hazel from a really good source, or seeing if friends have a witch hazel bush that you can harvest from when it's time to harvest. And see if you even like this, right? See if you even like doing this process. This process you can actually use to make rose water and a couple other things, and we'll get into all that later. But I found this very beneficial to just know that I know that everything that's going into my witch hazel, because I do use it for a couple things, either my room spray, or if I need to, wipe my face, clean, anything like that. So what we're going to start, and so if you're going to harvest yourself, you'll want to make sure that you take just the suckers from your bush, right? You don't want to do real harm to your bush, and make sure it's during a time in the year when you can do it for your area, that you don't harm your bush or stress it out during certain times. Again, if you want to order some just to do this, to see if it's something that you would even care to do, there are a couple really good places where you can order this. I actually had some friends who had some, so I was able to just get it. You will then take the suckers off the plants. You will chop it up into fine pieces, and then you'll let it kind of air dry, cover it for like a 24-hour period. If you don't want to do that, that's okay too. The reason that you would air dry it before you do this process is to cut down on the scent in your house. If you like the smell of witch hazel, then it's not going to bother you. If you don't like the smell of witch hazel, then you're going to want to use that drying time in between to make sure that you can kind of cut down on the smell and the scents and stuff when you're making this. So you're going to start with 2 quarts of witch hazel, and you're just going to put it directly into your pot. And you're just going to kind of stir it around. Somebody ran off with my water. Oh, there it is. And for my process, again, because I told you I don't like my water, I just use distilled, and you're going to measure yourself out the same exact amount in water. Now, when you pour it in, you're going to want to make sure the plant matter that you have is covered, right? As long as it's covered, you have enough water. And then again, we just pour that in, and we'll stir it around so that way it kind of covers it. Whew. I can already smell it. And you're just going to stir this until your water is incorporated. I'm actually going to have to add a little more water because this was so finely ground up that the dust absorbed a lot of my water. So again, we'll just add water until it's covered. And I just put it in here so I can measure and see, ultimately how much I put in. So once you have your product covered, you're going to just turn this on low. Now, the whole point of this is to get it to a simmer, okay? Once it is simmering, then you will let it simmer for, let's see what I have on my notes, 30 to 35 minutes, okay? not boil. Okay, because we're not trying to burn our product. We're not trying to evaporate all the stuff out. We're just at this point trying to make a, well, I guess you could call it a tincture of sorts, right? We're just trying to infuse the water and break down what we need. So we're just going to let this sit. And then once, like I said, it'll get to a simmer point. Once it's simmering, I will then start my timer for about 30 to 35 minutes, depending on, how well it's going. I usually stop it at 30, but of course, if you need to, you can go to 35 minutes just to see. And what you're going to be looking for, right, is to see if your water is starting to kind of change colors, and get a darker color to it, so you can actually tell that the plant matter is kind of breaking down a little bit. So yeah, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to watch this for a little bit. When I get to a simmer, I'll show you guys a video of what that's looking like, of what my version of simmer is. I know we all probably cooking have different ideas of simmer. So I'll get that put together and I'll watch this and see how it's looking. And then once we get a good simmer going to it, I'll come back and show you guys. Okay guys, so as you can see, the steam is starting to collect on the top. I'm going to peek at this right quick, but you see how it's just got a slight, steamed you guys out, sorry. So it's just got a very slow bubble coming up to the top. That's kind of the simmer that we're looking for. So now I'm going to set my timer for 30 minutes. Just keeping an eye on it, stirring it, making sure it doesn't burn, all that type of stuff, and then we'll come back. Hey guys, so my timer just went off, and what we're going to do now, right? So most people would then take this at this process and they would strain it out, and you end up with this really dark liquid in here because you've made, you have infused everything and broke down the materials. But we're not going to do that. We're going to take the next step and we're going to make a commercial grade. So what you're going to do at this point is you're going to measure out a cup of 80%, and I use vodka, alcohol, and we're just going to add a cup to the mixture. I'm going to pour that in, and we're going to stir that around. And the alcohol makes it shelf stable. If you don't want to use the alcohol, then it needs to go into your refrigerator when you're done. But if you do use the alcohol, it has now made it shelf stable. So we're going to take, I use just my canning divider. We're just going to put that down in there. Make sure you just kind of drop it in. Don't try to put your fingers in because it will raise up and burn you. And then we're going to take a bowl and set it on top. Any bowl will work. If you don't have a canning insert to put in there, if you have a colander that will fit that you can put upside down, something that's going to allow, right, the steam to come up through. A clean bowl, we're going to stick that on top of it. And then we're going to take our top and we're going to invert it. Now we want to make sure that our top is concave, so that way all of the moisture that we collect at the top is now going to roll down. What I usually end up doing is I take a towel, and it can be the same one you kind of use to keep your hands clean through the process, and I fold it a couple times because my concave actually has a hole for a vent. Well, I don't want it to vent, right? So we're going to still keep it on that low consistency, but we're going to take it more up to a boil now, right? So that way we get a good steam distillation happening in our pot. All of it's going to collect on the top, and then it's going to kind of go down into our bowl. This process we're going to do for 45 minutes to an hour. Again, coming back and checking it, making sure that there's, still liquid in the pot, and you'll be able to tell where everything is going. You also want to keep an eye on it to make sure nothing's shifted and the witch hazel that you're making has not poured off into your pot. Like, accidents can happen. So we're just going to keep an eye on it through this process. I'm going to set a timer. At the end of that timer, at that 45 minutes, that's where my first check will be. I'll see how much I have collected. The ultimate goal in this is you're going to get somewhere to a pint. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, depending. If you use the same collection device over and over again, you'll know when you're getting close. Also, something that's kind of helpful too, if you're not going to use that jar for anything else, put a Sharpie line on it. You could if you wanted to. Just depends on, how how often you make it. You'll get used to it and what it's going to look at. So like I said, I'm going to set my timer for 45 minutes, but this could go up to an hour depending. We're going to bring it up to a low boil and we're going to let it just kind of distill. Do not take the top off. Unless, of course, bad things happen, then take the top off. But we don't want to just kind of pick it up or stir it or anything. We're just going to let this kind of sit and distill. So let me set my timer. When that's done, we'll be back and I'll show you the completed process if all goes well. Okay guys, so this has been going for about an hour and we have collected some in there. I took some shots for you guys to show you right at the different intervals, like how it was collecting, and so you could actually see in the pot the best you could. You don't want to take the top off at this point. There is so much heat built up in here. If you try to take it off, the steam that is in there will fry you. So what you're going to do is you're just going to turn your heat off and you're going to let this sit until it is completely cooled. And then once it's completely cooled, you will then, take your witch hazel out. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm just going to let this naturally cool and settle. And then once it's all done, we'll come back and then I'll show you what we'll ultimately end up putting in our jar. Hey guys, so this has finished processing. And what we did is, like I said, I just took it off the heat and I let it sit here on my countertop until, it's practically cold. And you'll still see when you get to this point that there's still, some drops on the top. So when you take it off, it's just best to turn it so all your liquid runs down into your catchment. Not a perfect science. And then you're going to just take your container out that you sat in there. And you're going to want to make sure that you wipe off any of the residue that happened to show up, attach itself to the side of your container. Because what you don't want to do is go and pour this in your container and then have some particles and stuff fall in. Because the way you use witch hazel, you don't want to contaminate and have little sticks, you rub on your face or whatever. So then I just take this from that point and I pour it into my container. And like I said, the alcohol's in there, so it is shelf stable. It smells really good too. And then I'm just going to cap it off and it'll sit on my shelf for a year. This is usually enough to last me for a while, but it really depends on like how many room sprays I'm making, how many things for my face I'm making, how many boo-boos, bumps, etc. that I need to use it for. This was actually, one of the processes, and I went back and checked my notes. This is actually, I got this from one of the Amish ladies when we lived in Pennsylvania, and this is the way that they did theirs. And it had been passed down from her grandmother. So I thought that was kind of interesting tidbit too, but yeah. So I have noticed myself personally that if it is more of a powdery consistency, I don't get as much of a yield back. So you're definitely going to want to break this up and leave it more in a shaved stick type of particle, right? And not a fine powder, because the powder will just absorb all your water. And if it absorbs all your water, then it doesn't make the condensation that you need. But like I said, I think this is pretty cool. You can use this same exact process to make like rose waters and stuff like that if you want to. I might actually do that for us because I actually have a lot of rose petals that I keep drying them and having them set around. So I might actually rehydrate them and show you that process too. So that way if you wanted to make your own rose waters for face washes, etc., you could do that. So I appreciate you guys stopping by. I hope you found this entertaining and I hope you have a great day.